right. MTV Studio here with Dr. Marino, Trinity Orthopedics, COREX. Thanks so much for sitting down with us. It's an honor to meet you, sir.
Thank you. It's our pleasure, and looking forward to a short discussion with you about what we're doing.
Yeah, so let's start there. What's going on right now? Can you? What are we?
So I've been affiliated with Trinity Orthopedics for about close to 20 years, and the company started after I left NuVasive, and I wanted to explore some of the ideas I had that were unfulfilled at NuVasive, and we started out with some very large ambitions, but realized within a short period of time that we couldn't afford many of the things that we had hoped to do. And we wanted to focus on a product that we thought had both strong clinical merit and was very achievable. And so we decided, let's focus on a minimally invasive autologous cancellous bone harvester. And that was the birth, if you will, of the COREX device. And we thought at the time that it would answer a lot of the clinical issues associated with autologous bone harvesting, which were primarily those of donor site morbidity. What we didn't anticipate to, let's say, sufficient extent was how much the marketing effort for for basically Infuse, for BMP2, was going to alter the perceptions of the market regarding the value and the efficacy of autologous bone. And to the credit of those who were doing the marketing for Infuse, they quoted literature which tended to be historically out of date about open techniques and the high morbidity, and that, in a sense, prompted many of the clinicians to not examine and continue to do autologous bone harvesting. So we've been persisting, if you will, under those market circumstances with our product, because we know from both my personal experience and from other clinicians' use that you can use the product and harvest cancellous bone with trivial levels of discomfort at the harvest site and virtually no long-term morbidity, virtually not. And we've been doing it now for well over 17 years, and we have had no MAUD reports for a serious or life-threatening complication, and we've had close to 40,000 uses. So we know the product's safe. We know from those surgeons who have used it that it works well, and we're just trying to get the word out. And we're trying to do this in an environment where there's a lot of, let's just say, interest in alternatives, but we think the gold standard should be looked at again.
No, I mean, I certainly understand that and hear that. Where did this begin? Like you mentioned, your early NuVasive days. I spent definitely some time myself.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I named it NuVasive, so I started very early. We did a few drawings and a few engineer renderings in my basement, and I raised the original money for NuVasive and was with the company for a while. And of course, there were many talented people who took that company and made it a large success. So, I mean, they deserve a great deal of credit for that. But while I was there, I shared with them this idea of minimally invasive bone harvesting. And I don't think it fit within their product vision.
Right.
And so it reverted to me. So when I left the company, I sort of traded stock for some of my ideas.
Right.
And this was one of the things I was able to recover.
That's fantastic. Well, and it's interesting to see now the market. There's a lot more other products on the market.
Tremendous number of products, and some of them very costly.
Yeah.
And I would say that if you're looking for cost justification, which we should all be at some point examining, because the healthcare dollars are precious, one needs to find some kind of scientific basis to support some of these, premium priced orthobiologics or bone graft substitutes. And I can just tell you, it's easy to do. You can just do a simple Google search on, cell-based matrices and the evidence associated with them.
Right.
And there's been several systematic reports, which are basically studies that look at a variety of studies, and they all come to the same conclusion, that there's no cost justification, that there's no evidence of superiority with the addition of mesenchymal stem cells. And there's also some misinformation. These mesenchymal stem cells are not immunologically privileged, as is often espoused. They, in fact, do elicit in vivo immunologic responses. Mm-hmm. And I think, as you know, chondroblasts and osteoblasts are necessary for bone production. And those are certainly not immunologically privileged. So the idea that these mesenchymal stem cells can be harvested, expanded in culture, and then reintroduced to DBM and allograft, cancellous allograft, and that they somehow improve the performance of those allografts is just not based on science.
Do you think that what you just said and the knowledge of all of this is well known throughout your colleagues, spine surgeons, orthopedic surgeons?
Not at all. Not at all. I don't think I have little question in my mind that most of my colleagues have no idea that these fairly expensive bone graft substitutes have no demonstrated efficacy when you look at systematic review studies. I don't think you have any idea. They are listening to their reps, and they like the convenience of opening a bottle as opposed to harvesting. But fundamentally, many of them have never tried or will never entertain the idea of trying a percutaneous, minimally invasive autologous bone harvester. And it's really unfortunate because they're sacrificing an opportunity, if you will, to use the best material. You do a lot of work. When you're doing an interbody fusion, there's a lot of work, particularly if you're doing a TLIF or some of the other more demanding approaches. And when you're there and you do all that preparation, the last thing you want is to use an inferior product.
Right.
So, I've had surgeons tell me, I use your product on, smokers, or I use them on diabetics. And I think to myself, well, if you think they're that valuable that you use them on your toughest cases, why not just use them on all your cases? And then I had one surgeon tell me, well, I'm going to be taking my boards and I wanted to make sure all my cases fuse. Well, I hope after your boards you want to make sure all your cases fuse. So, I'd understand if harvesting autograft was really problematic or very time consuming, or it produced significant morbidity. But it's not the case with minimally invasive harvesting techniques. And the use of local bone, which is sometimes thought of as an equivalent, is not, because you're basically using fragments of cortical bone,
right,
sometimes fibrous tissue, sometimes cartilage from the facet joints, and that's not the same as cancellous bone.
Right.
So I would again emphasize to those colleagues that might be listening that reconsider autologous cancellous bone, because it is the gold standard, and for good reason. You got over 100 years of published data,
right,
by surgeons who are not conflicted and don't have any potential conflict of interest, demonstrating broad efficacy in a variety of applications. So, I think that's something surgeons should consider. And we have a program that will make it easy for surgeons to try it without cost or with very little risk or upfront investment. And I'd hope that they would consider that.
Wow, fascinating. So what's next? What's the future look like for you guys, for COREX, for Trinity Orthopedics, for you personally? What's the future?
Well, I think I'm inherently a person who enjoys problem solving, and inventing is problem solving. I take pleasure, if you will, in trying to devise new methods of addressing problems. And I'm fortunate to have an excellent collaborator, our president and CEO, Jameil Obana, yes, who happens to share the same first name, is an excellent engineer, a leader, and also inventor. And we have some ideas, but a lot of our efforts are currently to promote the COREX and hopefully follow up with some successive ideas that are essentially minimally invasive or low cost That's our effort.
So who should care about this story? Distributors, doctors, hospitals, patients? Like, what do you want the message to land with? Who do you want that message to land with?
Well, I think primarily with the surgeons, because the patients, for the most part, are going to comply with whatever their surgeons recommend.
Sure.
And when it comes to distributors, our product, although it's reasonably priced, is not nearly as expensive as some of the premium price products. So there's a little bit of an interest, if you will, on how much is going to be made on a sale. So I'm not sure distributors, many distributors will find it all that attractive to sell a lower costing product. But I think surgeons ultimately want to see their procedures succeed. And I think some of them are just unfamiliar with autologous bone harvesting. They weren't trained on it, or they have very little experience, or they may even have some kind of a stigma associated with autologous, thinking that somehow it's antiquated, that it's old technology. And I guess I would like them to understand that that's just a misconception, and that percutaneous bone harvesting, autologous bone harvesting, is like endoscopic or arthroscopic surgery is to the open arthrotomy procedures of the past, or open laparotomy procedures, and that the levels of complications and the simplicity of the procedure, and that it's a very quick procedure. We don't do any muscle stripping. We don't do any soft tissue stripping. We get through a small cortical window. We're able to access the cancellous bone and many different redirected axes. And we can produce an abundant amount of bone, enough to fuse 2 levels in the lumbar spine with an interbody fusion through a single incision. And if you needed to go to the other side, you could. But I would just say they should look again at autologous bone harvesting in a minimally invasive manner. And I think, somewhat biased, of course, that we have best in class for that type of product.
Minimally invasive, autologous bone harvesting, COREX by Trinity Orthopedics. Dr. Marino, it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much
for joining us. Anything else you'd like to share?
No, I'm just grateful for the opportunity. I wish you well. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Great to meet you, sir.
Same here.